Today, we've got a story that's going to flip the script on how you think about immigration. It's about an American who spent 13 years as an undocumented immigrant. But, and this is the interesting part, not in the way you're probably imagining.
Just let that sink in for a second. That's a quote from the author Jody Jenkins. And you immediately get this picture, right? Someone hiding in the shadows, always looking over their shoulder. But trust me, the reality of his story is something else entirely. So you see a picture like this, and what do you think of? Borders, right? Probably the US border. But here's the twist. Jenkins wasn't trying to get into America. He's an American who is living illegally in France. Yeah, that completely changes everything from the get-go.
All right, so let's dive into this unexpected immigrant. I mean, he wasn't fleeing war or poverty, not at all. He was chasing an idea, inspired by those lost generation writers like Hemingway, who all flocked to Paris way back when. And this really gives you a window into his head. He just didn't believe in borders, saw them as these, imaginary lines that shouldn't get in the way of art or life for that matter. It was this really romantic kind of artistic quest. He didn't want anything from the country, just the freedom to be there. But that kind of thinking has some very, very real-world consequences. So how did he get by? Well, he basically became the original gig economy worker. We're talking freelance journalism, translating documents, working on boats. He even crewed for hot air balloonists. Can you imagine? This life on the edge, as he calls it, really sharpened his survival skills. It was a constant hustle, out there living in the open, but always having to work in the shadows. And get this one little detail just says it all. For 13 years, his only piece of legal ID was a barge pilot's license. A barge pilot's license. Why? Well, it was one of the only official things he could get without having to prove he was a citizen. That was his one tiny, fragile thread connecting him to any kind of official life. Living like that, it changes you. It forges a certain kind of person. Jenkins points out that the other expats he knew, legal or not, they were all ambitious, adventurous, super entrepreneurial. These are people literally walking a tightrope every single day. And here's the real kicker. He says these are the exact same traits America loves to celebrate in its own stories, the American myth. But then we turn around and question those very same qualities in the people showing up at our borders. And all this taught him a huge lesson about what it really means to be a citizen, precisely because he wasn't one. He found himself in these situations where he had to choose between his moral duty and his personal legal risk. And in the most intense ways possible. So remember that barge pilot's license? Well, to get it, he had to take a serious first aid course. And here's the thing, that course legally required him to help anyone he saw in trouble. And wouldn't you know it, in the 1 month after he got certified, his character got put to the test, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And these were life or death situations. And this is where it all comes to a head, the ultimate dilemma. On one hand, he's legally and morally bound to help. On the other, he's an undocumented immigrant, and getting involved with the authorities is the last thing he can do. After he pulled a man from drowning, what's the very first question the cops ask him? Where are your papers? So by the 3rd time something like this happened, he did what he had to do. He pointed the police in the right direction, and then he just... Okay, so fast forward. Jenkins eventually makes his way back to the United States. But the country he comes back to is... well, it's a nation that is completely torn apart over the one issue that had shaped his entire life for 13 years, immigration. This quote, wow, it shows you just how deep the psychological scars were. He tells this story about how he read about a spy during World War II who trained himself to yawn whenever the Gestapo was around. The thinking was, who yawns when they have something to hide, right? It's the perfect cover. For Jenkins, this became an involuntary reflex. It was baked into his very being after so many years of living on high alert. So he comes home to this national conversation where the words being thrown around about immigrants just felt so personal, so hostile. He couldn't help but feel a deep connection to people struggling to make it here. He basically asks, how can America sell this big, beautiful dream to the entire world and then turn around and demonize the very people who are brave enough to chase it? And this really brings us to his final and maybe most important point. He argues that this whole debate, it's not really about what immigrants are taking from us. It's about what their presence forces us to become. You hear it constantly, right? They're stealing our jobs. It's like the #1 argument against immigration. But what if that's completely the wrong way to look at it?
What if we're asking the wrong question? He brings up this great quote from the comedian Doug Stanhope. Stanhope saw these people in rags getting arrested right after crossing the border, and he just said, if they're stealing our jobs, we need to retool. It's funny, yeah, but it's also a serious challenge, right? The problem isn't them, it's us. Their hunger, their drive, it pushes us to be better. And that's his whole idea right there. Retooling. It's something he had to do every single day just to survive in France. And his argument is that immigrants don't threaten the American dream, they are the American dream. They're the engine. Their presence forces a country to constantly rethink itself, to get better, to evolve, just like he had to. You take away that pressure to adapt, and what happens? You just stack. He ends with this incredibly powerful quote he saw inscribed on a Vietnam vet Zippo lighter. And it connects two totally different kinds of struggle, the soldier and the immigrant. It really gets that deep, profound sense of appreciation you only get when you've had to fight for your life, fight for your dream. It's a taste, a flavor that you just can't understand if you've always been protected. So he leaves us with this final question to chew on. And it's not really about politics or policy. It's bigger than that. It's about who we want to be. Are we a nation that's afraid of change? Or are we a nation that can harness the incredible energy and grit of the people who fight the hardest just for a